I really liked the first third. If the whole movie was that, it was just a straight zombie horror movie, I would have liked it more.
Hi, I'm Vernon and this is Kit, and we just watched One Cut of the Dead. Kit, what did we watch?
We watched a Japanese horror movie, but also the making of the horror movie, which kind of worked, but I think it was maybe too clever.
The first third of the film is a really low budget shot on video version of, let's say, a zombie version of Shadow of the Vampire, but with zombies. The director fools his actors into shooting a zombie film with real zombies.
It's about 30 minutes of the zombie horror movie, and then the big reveal, sorry spoiler, is that that was actually it was fiction, it was a real movie. So the middle third shows the pre-production of the movie that we just saw, and then the last third of the movie shows again what we saw in the first third, but
explaining why there was some weird continuity errors and problems with pacing, and it's done as a comedy.
So it's like a behind-the-scenes shoot of the original horror show, but sort of done in real time, so it takes up about 30 minutes also.
Yes, but I think what makes it work is that you can tell the story in several different ways while saying something new. And for me, because it says something new, it kind of works. It's very cheesy, it's very campy, it's very low budget, and it is really done one location, one continuous shoot.
Yeah, but it was inventive.
It's very inventive. It's really done in sort of guerrilla filmmaking or amateur filmmaking.
With an Instagram filter on it, so the color's a bit off. With a shaky cam, they didn't use any stabilizer on it at all. Okay, some background about the movie. Of course, we did a bit of Googling and Wikipediaing.
No. We know things about this movie because he drinks and he knows things.
It's really cheap production, 3 million yen, which works out to be about 25,000 US.
Really cheap.
But it gained some traction in the movie festival circuit, and it went into wider release in Japan. And in Japan alone, it actually grossed 3,000 million yen, which is
a returns of what, 100 times or 1,000 times? Yeah. So I can see why it really succeeds. It tells 3 different stories from one incident.
It struck me more like a student film. It was, this really cute idea, you know. It's like, too cute, too clever by half.
Why is it too clever by half? Because when you say too clever by half, I would think it means contrived.
The thing is, once you realize what the gimmick is,
and what the twist is,
the actual
execution,
it's like, okay,
it's too predictable for him.
It's a bit amusing, but I felt I was wasting my time.
It's hilarious, because as someone who has done amateur filmmaking and low budget guerrilla filmmaking several years back, I thought this actually fits in with all the hilarious and comic things that can happen, mishaps on a shoot, on the pre-production, that lead to, well, the very interesting and brilliant product that you see in the first third of the film.
Yeah, so like one of the actors gets drunk, and so they have to work around that. And
his zombie is surprisingly the most interesting, frightening and funny zombie.
And there were some things like one take was too long, the lead actress was screaming away, and watching it in the first third, I was thinking, hey, you know, this is going on a bit too long, and it's actually part of the story. there was another mess up, and that's why they had to hold the take for too long. It's a bit interesting, it's a bit amusing, but...
It is very amusing. I think this film is catering to, well, basically you said it, the film festival market, who basically go for this kind of what you would consider an overwritten story.
Yeah, but somehow it did well in general release in Japan.
If you take the context of Japanese film and film trends, yeah, this is quite inventive, this is quite creative.
Why it makes me think of a student film is like, it's a bit like saying, yeah, see how clever I am, you know.
See how clever I am. First, I am going to do Shadow of the Vampire, but with zombies. And then, I'm going to do a reveal and make it a comedy. And then, I'm going to do another reveal and tell the story another time as a comedy of mishaps on a shoot. It's very clever, but it could be too clever.
Well, my personal preference is that I'm not too fond of gimmicks. I like pure story, character and stuff, so yeah, this seemed a bit gimmicky to me. See, it's a bit like Back to the Future 2 or 3.
Yeah, where they keep going back to the original Back to the Future.
You see the scenes from the previous movie, but now from a different perspective. You actually see
the same scene replayed, retold, but
with
slightly new context. I am quite impressed by the pre-production stage of this film. It shows you the amount of preparation that you need, the storyboarding that you need, the blocking that you need to prepare for.
That was very brief, it didn't show much.
Yeah, but I'm quite happy to see that they actually did it for real, kind of, over here.
Okay.
Like rehearsing all the blocking, all the movements, all the spacing in between the actors and the camera.
Yeah, but how
else are you going to make a film?
No, I mean, without your background, do you think the general audience would also appreciate it?
Without my background, probably what they will see is something they've never seen before, and it might click together for them. Why not? I mean, it's behind the scenes. It's sort of it's like Ed Wood making a bad film, except now you get to watch how Ed Wood made a bad film.
But it was a good film, right?
Yes, it is a good film. Because as trashy as it is, it's very creative.
I would compare it a bit with Singapore's Zombie-Pura, which we reviewed a few weeks back, in that the individual scenes were quite inventive. But somehow Vernon thinks that this one was inventive, but Zombie-Pura was not.
You can't predict the actual jokes that would crop up. At least I couldn't predict the actual jokes that cropped up in the second and third act of this film, whereas in Zombie-Pura I could predict almost every other joke that would be brought up, because they're part of the National Service law.
Okay, alright. I have a different background, I couldn't predict both.
Both Kit and I agree that the first third of the film is the best third of the film, because it is a technical challenge.
No, I like story.
Yeah, you like story, I like story with great execution. And the execution here, or the challenge here, is the first third of the film is shot in one take, on one camera, no cutting, no editing.
One of the rationales for having a one long take, for example in Birdman, is that you get a better feel of the environment, because when you cut from like a corridor into the room, you're not really sure how the room is in relation to the corridor, especially if there's more than one room. So if you're tracking, if there's a single take, you go from the corridor to the room, then from the room out into the corridor to another room, you really get a sense of how the rooms like relate to each other in space. I guess there are other rationales to it, but I don't think they really override the distraction that
it's more of an artistic statement these days.
Another famous one is like Children of Men. There's a famous scene where they're in the car and then the car gets attacked with fire bombs and this crazy like mob, and yeah, so the car backs up and drives away, and it's just one continuous take. But the thing is, the camera moves inside the car, like from it shows the passenger seat, it shows the driver, it turns around, it shows the passengers. And when I was watching it, I was like, what? The camera moved into the driver's seat? I mean, what happened to the driver? How did they do that?
The driver was missing.
And then afterwards, you find out that they created this really elaborate rail rig over the top of the car, and that's how they did it. I mean, they had like a skylight open at the top of the roof of the car. The camera could move in there and move out through the window, and well,
It calls out to its artistic aspects, I think, or visual aspects.
it calls out that it calls attention to the camera, to the artifice, that this is shot. This is an artificial movie.
But I think, you know, if you want to watch the first third of this film as an artificial movie, I think you could watch it that way. I mean, I don't know what it adds, but it probably could work. The most famous single cut that I'm familiar with is the one in Soy Cuba, in which basically a funeral march in a street is shot from the coffin up and passes through several buildings, through the windows, through the factories, through the corridors. And you wonder how on earth it was done. And like what Kit said, elaborate system of dollies and strings and people pulling a camera in the basket. It works for me. It sets off the first 1/3 of this film as its own entity.
Well, the coloring already did that, and it's pretty obvious, right?
Yeah, it's definitely shot on video, and really cheap video at that.
No, they gave
or rather
it
low res video.
they gave it the video look, but I think the camera was better. It was capable of much better image quality.
We don't notice it.
White, it's you
Yeah,
can do like
the
white.
Star Wars style.
No, I mean you can somebody walking across the camera, so you know, so it gets blurred out like that, and that's where you do it. And that's where you hide the cut.
Right. Which did happen in Birdman.
Okay. Technically, for the film cameras, you were limited to about 14 to 17 minutes of a single take because you would run out of film in the film spool.
That's if you're actually shooting with film these days.
Yeah, so the early ones you were still limited by that.
Yeah.
Whereas digital you could just go on. There's no real limit. But-
No, the real limit is how far can you shoot before you mess up in your execution? Which happens to be the running gag in the third act of this movie.
So back to Snake Eyes. My favorite one, long take, is still the first one that I noticed, which was Snake Eyes. I guess I was beginning to become a real movie buff then, and I was so excited. Oh, they didn't cut. I wasn't really familiar with the concept of a long take yet, so I kind of like, it was like, oh, I discovered it by myself, you know. And he did it well. It was steady cam. They followed Nicolas Cage. He was like a normal Nicolas Cage. He was acting over the top. He was talking to people.
That's normal Nicolas Cage.
Was,
I don't know what abnormal Nicolas Cage is for him.
He was moving out. He went to the back alley, came back, you know, and the camera would like spin around him to show the other actors. And it also ended very nicely because Snake Eyes, it starts with the long take was the introduction of Nicolas Cage's character. He's this dirty cop, corrupt cop in Las Vegas, and then it goes into this boxing match, and that's when it stops, and that's actually story-wise that it makes sense because it's a very clear-cut change in the story between the introduction of Nicolas Cage's character and the start of the story proper with the boxing match.
Right, and by Kit's logic, I would say that the first third of One Cut of the Dead is similar. that one cut tells one complete story that is very clearly separated tonally and thematically from the other acts of the movie.
Yeah, and for the rest of Snake Eyes, you know that they're going to go to conventional cutting already, so you're not wondering, so are they going to do another long take, right? So it works. Yeah.
It does.
Oh, and if you're wondering why we watched it and why it happened to be of reasonable quality, okay, one of the things is that Singapore, I guess they only get these like small indie movies that already have some market success or movie festival success.
Our cinematographers association members made the mistake of bringing in too many foreign films at about 15-20 years ago. They brought in everything and they made money on very little foreign films. So these days, Singapore's movie distributors are very conservative. They only bring in foreign films that have already made a lot of money elsewhere. But anyway, we'll figure out what we can both agree to watch next week, and we'll see you then. Like us, subscribe, hit the like button, troll us if you want, comment, whatever. Thank you.